Today I am going to redo one of my old videos, another one. This one is for something we called in New England clam cakes. Technically they're fritters, but everybody called them clam cakes. Sometimes you saw them as Rocky Point clam cakes. I took some heat for these and not from the stove. First time I did the video because I use yeast as a leavener rather than baking powder, and people railed, why did you use yeast? Everybody knows you're supposed to use baking powder. What do you say to those people? Having an opinion doesn't make them an authority, it only makes them opinionated. On my website and on YouTube I do have a recipe for clam fritters made with baking powder, and here's a picture of what they look like. They look pebbly, they look like they have warts or moles growing on them. That's what they look like. Now when I use yeast to make clam cakes, this is what the clam cakes look like. And I prefer this look. They're smooth, they're rounded. The only way I can explain this is I think by using yeast, I can build up the gluten chains for a more elastic dough batter. It's kind of halfway in between. Whereas by using baking powder, which contains, I always call it sodium bisulfite, but it's not. It's bicarbonate of soda. Those granules, I think, either prevent gluten chains from forming, or it chops them up and you don't get the elasticity and therefore you don't get the smoothness. I prefer nice round cakes. So that's what I want to do today, is I want to make clam cakes. What I have here is 2 cans of baby clams. These are 10-ounce cans, 283 grams. Inside, usually I find 5 ounces, 142 grams of clams by weight, and 5 fluid ounces of clam broth. These say water and salt added. I'm not sure whether I'm going to get clams juice in there or whether I'm going to get water. So just to be careful, I also have a bottle here of clam juice. I'll see what I get from these cans, and I'll use this if I need to get the flavor that I want. This really is what gives the clam cakes a nice flavor, the broth. I open these cans part way here, and that looks like broth to me, not water. So that could be good. You want to retain this liquid, obviously, but I'm also going to measure this to see how much liquid I have, because I just don't know that I'm going to have enough for my recipe. I need a total of 10 fluid ounces, or just shy of 300 milliliters of broth. So there's my broth, 300 milliliters, exactly what I was hoping for. That's about 1 1/8 cup. And then here are my baby clams. You could use chopped clams if you want. I weighed these. They came out at just a little over 10 ounces. So I warmed my broth a little bit in the microwave. I like to get it up to about 110 degrees Fahrenheit, which is about 43 degrees Celsius. I put that in a bowl. I have here 11 ounces by weight, 312 grams of all-purpose flour. That's about 2 1/4 cups. I'm going to put maybe half, not even half that flour in that bowl, along with 2 teaspoons of yeast. And you can, if you want, add a little pinch of sugar. That'll help to get that yeast activated. And you want to dissolve this together and let this sit for a few minutes, maybe 5 to 10 minutes, just to activate that yeast. I'm using active dry yeast. I'm seeing foam starting on the surface here. That's a good indication that my yeast is active. So I'm going to add the remainder of my flour along with 1/2 teaspoon of salt. If you like your clam cake saltier, you can increase that to maybe 3/4 of a teaspoon. I don't like things too salty. And then I'm going to combine all this together to form what is like halfway between a batter and a dough. There you are. Looks like that. And then I'm going to add my clams and put those in. kind of fold that in to the batter. These are going to make nice clam cakes because I have a lot of nice big pieces of clam there. All right, so that's combined. That looks pretty good. Make sure they're distributed fairly evenly, the clams. I'm also going to grind some black pepper in there. Not a whole lot, maybe about a 1/4 teaspoon at the most. I like black pepper inside this batter, these clam cakes. Gonna stir that in well. I'm already seeing gluten chains start to build up. It's starting to take on a stringy texture. Okay, I'm gonna cover this with plastic. Let it rest in a warm place. The yeast will cause this dough to rise up a little bit. I'm gonna say for rising time, 30 to 45 minutes. This has been sitting now for about 45 minutes. It's risen up quite a bit. I'm going to shake that down just a little bit to get some of the air out of it. Okay, and what I'm going to use is something called a disher. It's like a little ice cream scoop. They come in different sizes. This is a Hamilton Beach. They're available on Amazon. This is a number 30. The bowl is 1 fluid ounce or 30 milliliters. I also have a larger one that I'm not going to use. This is a number 24, which is 1.5 fluid ounces, 44 milliliters. I like this smaller one for my clam cakes. In the meantime, I've been heating oil to 375 degrees Fahrenheit, 190 degrees Celsius. So using my disher, I'm going to drop those into the oil. I can get about 6 to 8 in this pan. As far as the amount of oil that's in here, it's 6 to 8 cups, which is 1.5 to 2 quarts, or 1.5 to 2, roughly 1.5 to 2 liters. And these fry in about 3 to 4 minutes. I'm using corn oil here. You could use peanut oil if you want. At this oil temperature, I seem to get very little oil soaking into the clam cakes. All right, that's enough in the pan for right now. In the meantime, I've also got a plate set aside lined with paper towel, and I'm going to be using a spider to lift these out. You might need to turn them over once in a while while they're cooking. I find that the chopstick works well for that. Oftentimes they turn over by themselves. As they cook well on one side, they flip over and cook on the other. You can see how nicely golden these are becoming. These have been in there for about 4 minutes. I'm going to transfer these to the plate that I lined with paper towel, and then I'll start cooking some more. You want to just keep doing this until you've used up all of your batter. So there they are. I got 30 out of that batch of batter, and they're not as smooth and round as a golf ball, but they're a lot smoother and better looking, I think, than the fritters. The last step is to taste these. I've been making these for decades, so I know how they're going to taste. Cooked all the way through. That's how I remember them from New England. All right, delicious. These are New England clam cakes. Excuse me, I'm going to go enjoy my afternoon snack. For a printable PDF copy of this recipe with step-by-step photographs, visit my website, mobilehomegourmet.com, and look on the home page or in the recipe archive.